Welcome back, everyone, to episode 4 of the Minot Business Podcast presented by Bennett Creative Media. We are back again Wednesday morning. We have a very special guest with us, Jonah Lantto. Jonah, how's it going?
It's awesome, man. It's good to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So
I'm excited to be a special guest for once.
Right? Usually you're the host of the podcast, and now I'm like, hey, get your ass in here and we're going to interview you.
Yeah, let's do it.
So just like the previous 3 episodes, we're going to start with an introduction, kind of just go through your story, and just spitball, see where it goes. So Jonah Lantto, what do you do for the people that don't know?
Currently, in a nutshell, I run an audiovisual production company that specializes in podcasts and live events and cinematic commercial media. We've worked together. I've worked with Adam Dice, other people who have been on your podcast. So that's it in the 10-second elevator style.
The elevator pitch. I love the elevator pitch. So as far as the company, the Good Talk Network, that's what you call it, correct?
Correct.
So how did you formulate the Good Talk Network? And I know it has transitioned from the company it started as to the company it is today. It's evolved a lot. Where did that company start from? How did you decide, okay, I want to start this. I want to go down this path?
Late 2016, I was listening to a ton of Joe Rogan. I was just getting into podcasts myself. I had been for the previous few years. We'd go to music festivals and listen to podcasts. And I was about to reach a really big transition point in my current career. The owner I was working for, I worked retail for a long number of years. I managed some retail stores. I worked insurance, all these different things. And this person was opening a new business. I didn't want to move into the new business. And I had started a podcast. I had some money. I had some money set aside. I don't carry a lot of debt, so I'd save some money,
which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my situation in that regard was really unique. And I didn't want to move forward into that new business. And I started this podcast. I had a buddy of mine. I was like, look, I got some money. I want to invest it. And I was thinking I'll either buy a drone and I'm going to get into some commercial drone business, or I'll start a podcast. And my buddy, Chris Robb, I called him up. I said, I want to start this podcast. Would you be my co-host? And he said, yes. And that was really the start of the Good Talk. And we wanted to have these really fun and organic and discussions, asking big questions. The first episode ever of the Good Talk, we were talking about robot beer trucks and artificial intelligence.
So the premise of that podcast, was it to just ask crazy questions like that? Or what was the premise of that podcast for the people that don't know?
To have deep, contextualized, organic discussions, sometimes about silly things, but also sometimes about very meaningful and important topics. And over time, we had very small goals. I wanted 10 people to listen to my podcast. That was it. With 10 people listen, that was a big win. And it worked, and people really liked it. And I started a Facebook group, and people kind of clung to it. Well, then Rub had to leave, and I had to keep it going. I liked it, and after about 3-4 months, I said, "Wow, what if I could really do this?
Yeah.
What if this really works?" I said, and I always said to myself, if this doesn't work, I can go sell cars.
Yeah,
and I'll make good money selling cars. That's what I told myself in that first year, and I kept meeting people, and people kept hearing about the podcast. I met Josh Walsky. Him and I formed a partnership through Good Talk Minot. He heard the show. He heard me talking at Broadway Bean and Bagel in a little coffee shop. Sent me a message. Said, "Man, I heard your podcast. I'm a fan of Big Lebowski. You're a Lebowski. I'm a Lebowski. You want to get a coffee or a beer?" And I met Walsky. I said yes. We formed the partnership. We started doing Good Talk Minot. It's
crazy the amount of people you meet.
Yes.
So I want to go back a little bit to before you started the podcast. So you said drones or podcast. Why those 2 options? Was there a reasoning behind why you had those 2 as your final 2 options?
It seemed to me those were 2 emerging industries, and I wanted to be interested in what I was doing. I wanted to have fun doing it.
Yeah.
And those 2 options felt like they could be a cool hobby or side hustle, but maybe lead to more. And I don't know that I expected the Good Talk to lead to where it was, but there was a reason it was called the Good Talk Network, because we always believed that it could organically grow through little conversations and very small moments. You could plant these little seeds and it would just be this little web that continues to grow out. That's the neural network, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what we felt like we were doing. And we kept getting really cool guests, really big guests. And I had this in my basement, right? I built a podcast studio.
I remember talking about that. Because when we were starting this, you were saying, I remember starting the podcast in the basement. It's all about where you start. That's what's exciting.
Yeah. And I've got really successful and reputable people coming into my humble home, right? A modest home, and down into my basement, past my little dogs. You know, my washer and dryer's there. I always made sure my laundry was picked up, but you're coming right in there, right?
Oh yeah.
And we're serving up coffees, and it was really cool. And through the Good Talk, I think I became more visible in the community. I met a lot more people. I became pretty aware of the nonprofit community and how they serve the area and what they do. And it kept going, right? And we were just recording a podcast, then we added video, and our video in the beginning was VHS quality, but we were doing it, right? And I didn't know anything.
And done is better than perfect. That's what I always tell people. It's like, even though a lot of people will sit there and meander and not start something just because like, I have to have everything perfect. The video has to be perfect. The audio has to be perfect. But I'd see the biggest thing is just getting started. Yeah. Just getting that first episode out there is crazy. And even when you talk about having that podcast in your basement, that's something we talked about before we started this podcast. The premise is just to meet new people. You know, we want to have conversations with people that are doing cool things, and eventually you talk to enough people and they introduce you to more people. And that's kind of the whole premise. So it's kind of cool how this podcast that you're now on as a guest started from your own podcast that you started as a host.
Hey, and it was always, what can I learn from these people? Like you said, I wanted to meet people who have wisdom and intelligence I did not, and ask them really meaningful questions that would force them to think in bigger ways. And people always loved that. So it was a lot of fun. We had so many interesting people on the show over the years. So through that, things kept building. Eventually I leveled up the studio out of my basement, and I moved into a full-time studio north of town. I partnered with Adam Dias, and that was a cool process. I got
episode number 2 guest.
Yeah, absolutely. Local guy. He does a lot of really cool things. But I had this like think session with a bunch of people who had different talents and their own businesses, and we sort of vision board. What can we do? How do we get out of the basement?
Yeah.
What's the end game goal? And let's work our way back from there. And I started taking those steps, and then we got into the studio.
So let's get right into that then. I was going to go to it in the end where, you know, we kind of talk about your North Star, but let's talk about, well, before we get to your North Star, we'll leave that towards the end, but business strategies to grow. Is there anything that you have seen that you've tried to use to grow your business, things that have worked, things that haven't worked? Is there anything that, you know, you're trying to implement to grow your business to the point it wants to be, or the point you want it to be?
I'm not sure I have any secrets that haven't already been told, but networking became really key. Partnerships are key. Saying yes is key. Those are the moments and the things that have led me here. For me, saying yes to things that I perhaps was previously uncomfortable with, joining a networking group, for example. Early on in the Good Talk, I joined Master Networks. There was a Master Networks chapter. It was like $50 a month.
Was it difficult getting into, because I know a lot of people say when they start networking, they're like anxious and nervous. Was that the same for you, like getting into the whole networking world? Or how did you feel about it?
The initial steps were, well, but once I got comfortable and once people were seeking me out to be guests on the show, and just more and more people were recognizing, it became easier. The initial step, yes, difficult.
Okay.
I thought joining a networking group was stupid, frankly. I really did. And that's something I was wrong about.
It almost
and that's
sounds
why it was
cheesy because everyone talks about it.
Yes, precisely. And that's how I felt. That's why I resisted for a while, but a friend of mine was starting it. And I also wanted to support her, right? She was kind of carving out her path, and I thought it was cool. I said, well, all right, I'll give this a shot. I need to learn this. I need to learn my pitch. I need to learn more about even having a podcast as a business. I'm still learning how to functionally deliver a podcast.
Let alone turn it into an actual business.
Correct. While I'm trying to maintain guests, while I'm trying to maintain production, I lost my partner a part of the way through, but things kept working out.
So, as far as the podcast goes, I want to get into the actual logistical side of things. How was it working as, I know you had a partner, but you were probably kind of like a one-man band doing everything, lining up guests, scheduling everything, producing it, filming it, posting it, editing it, all of it.
All of it.
Talk to me about, you know, for the people that are looking to start something like this, they want to get into the video audio world. what does that actually look like? Because a lot of people don't understand what it looks like. I mean, we have all these lights and microphones and setup and everything, but what does it look like for those people that are interested in this kind of thing?
It looks like if you haven't gone to school, right? If you haven't gone to school, if you can go to college,
That's a great example.
You can take a master class that can teach you. Do you have the time to do that, or do you jump in and learn? What did it look like for me? It looked like learning from ground zero, researching in abundance on the Googles, right? What's everybody doing, and what does everybody recommend, and finding consistency between different places that recommend things is how I started. And what's the deal? What's in my budget? I wanted it to sound good. So from the podcast angle, you want it to sound good first. Audio quality for me was the first most important thing. For me, it doesn't matter how awesome your content is. If it sounds like you're at the end of a hallway and speaking through a trash can, I don't want to hear it.
And it's especially audio. It's so, or podcast, it's so audio heavy that a majority, you'd think 90% of people listen to it. Obviously, we're recording this one and it's going to be on YouTube and Spotify has video now, but audio is the main thing for podcasts.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because what does it look like? It depends on what you're making. Yeah. Over time, it's changed for me. What Midwest Murder looks like is way different than what it looked like to make the Good Talk Minot. But it really is, it's tons of research for me. There was no local podcasting. I didn't have somebody I could call up and say, hey, can I pick your ear for 30 minutes? Or can
Especially in Minot.
No. And so I had to learn it independently. And it was, again, a lot of YouTubing. I found my way to Audacity.
What were your platforms of choice? So, for people wanting to look at that, did you go through, obviously YouTube is kind of the main hub. Did you use any other platforms?
No, I really didn't. I read a lot of what Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout has a nice, that's who I syndicate my podcast to, right? They're the distribution company online, but they have a really cool how-to, and they have, they actually do walk you through the steps, but you got to be patient. You got to read. You really do got to read through these things. It was hours and hours of time that you put in to focus on what you want to do and how you want to deliver it. Okay. I think I knew I wanted to talk and I wanted to create things, right? In terms of the content and the vocabulary and the dialogue. That part came a little easier for me, but learning the production side, then learning Audacity, learning the tricks of Audacity. Stuff. My first podcast, Easton, it didn't have an intro. I didn't even have an intro on it because I didn't know how to make one.
Like an audio intro or
nothing.
Like you just talking?
Literally, I don't even know if it's out there anymore, but if it was, it just fires up and it's boom, us talking.
It's like, so there was no even like, hey, I'm Jonah Lantto, blah, 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 blah.
We opened most of the first 20-ish episodes or so, maybe a little more. We would open all of them with a quote from Big Lebowski.
Okay, there you go.
And we'd fire off a Big Lebowski quote and just jump into a conversation.
Okay, and then you migrated to an intro.
Absolutely, yeah. Eventually, I migrated into a really cool intro. We put some things together. I found this synthetic British female voice, and it was your assimilation into the Good Talk Network begins, and then there was this cool countdown and blast off. And but that was a talent, I guess. I developed a sound for building an intro. I had the coffee talk for a long time. And I found a bunch of sounds. There's a lot of free sounds for people that here's a resource. There are sources online that have free sounds. There are other places online where you can pay a subscription, of course, and you can get access to more. For somebody who's new in the beginning, I didn't know that in the beginning. That was just basic. What seems to me like basic information now was something I had to find my way into. And I built this cool coffee talk intro. And it was like, if you could hear all the sounds that go into pouring coffee beans, grinding them, etc., and then you deliver that final cup, boom, zip, that was it.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing. It's, again, this goes back to just getting started for, if someone that wants to start a YouTube channel or they want to start their own business or this, but you don't know what you don't know until you do it. Right. Does that make sense? It does. You don't know that you need an intro until you filmed 5 episodes with no intro. And then you're like, oh shit.
Right.
So you're not going to know before you start the podcast that you need an intro because you have no idea.
Yeah. We sat there with our podcast gear set up and didn't have a name. Yeah. We're like, wow, what are we going to call this? Yeah. We just didn't know. So we ultimately said, well, hey, good talk, man.
Yeah.
And let's go with it.
And then you just ran with it.
Then we ran with it.
So pivoting a little bit now, you do podcasts and you're traveling around North Dakota. Have you been outside of North Dakota doing the Midwest Murder?
Yeah, we've done a few shows in Minnesota.
Okay, cool. So you have that realm of your business.
Yep.
Now you also have Good Night Live. Good Night Minot, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So
the more live event production side.
Correct. So other than the podcast, talk to me about the other live event production things you have. I've worked on a couple of them with you, but that's not necessarily a podcast, but it's in kind of the same realm. What does that look like?
Well, as an audiovisual production company, we can produce pretty much any kind of live event you might want, right? We can handle the creative, the writing. So, for example, the Surs Valley Animal Shelter, they wanted a game show for their gala this year.
Yep.
Let's give us a game show experience. You were there for that one. So that came from Good Night Live. Good Night Live was, of course, it's a late night comedy talk show hosted by Jake Throwkill and Miles Barkham, and that was sort of imaged after a combination of Saturday Night Live and The Tonight Show. It's been a lot of fun, and we haven't done a Good Night Live show in a while, but this production team that came from that, right? The origin of Good Night Minot, which became Good Night Live, started with, I met Jake Throwkill back in Master Networks, this stupid networking group.
Oh, really? Okay. I never understood or
That's
never
how
knew
I knew
how you
him.
met.
So the connecting pieces of Good Night Minot, nobody knew each other. I knew everybody, and Jake had this idea. I had met him through the podcast and through Master Networks, and he thought he could be a late night talk show host. Long story short, he thought he could be a late night talk show host. He called me up and
He
said,
does a hell of a job.
I think you're the guy that can help me do that. Jonah, like help me make this late night show.
Yeah.
I wasn't in a position to do it at the time. We had this meeting. We ran through all the things you would need to do. You need writers. You need to be able to write a monologue. You need skits. You need guests. And if you want it to be on a stage and with a band, you need a stage and a band and a venue. There's all this huge list of things that have to happen, and the team of people who can make it happen before you can get there. So now if you want to come into the studio, we can do a small, really little, like fun Jake Throwkill version of it. Fun, cool. He's like, no.
He said, no way. Yeah.
So I know he shopped the idea around a little bit. Nobody could make it happen. Flash forward about 6 months to a year, I got into the studio. I was working with Adam, and I had met more people. I'd met Dr. Jonah Lantto, she's a writer, and I had a lot of these people with good creative energy around. And Miles Barkham is an old friend of mine. He's in my fantasy football league, and I was talking to him about this idea. We're thinking about doing a late night show, and he's like, I love late night shows. Yeah. And I said, well, that's good because
you're going to be in it.
Yes, I said, because
we need you.
Yes, I think you would be a great co-host, band leader of this show.
Yeah.
And so with Adam and Brent and Jake and Sean Ann and a handful of other people, I introduced everybody, and we put this thing together. We found a venue, and the rest just built from there. And it was so nerve-wracking. The first night that we put on Good Night Minot, I was never more nervous for anything in my entire life.
Just to see how it'd go. But I suppose, you have no idea.
No idea. We had never done it before. What if something fails? What if nobody laughs? All the
that's got to be
be
the scary thing. What if nobody laughs?
Yeah,
was that nerve wracking?
Yeah,
because you think
man.
you read a joke and you think it's funny, but then it's like, is it really funny?
250 people in the audience, and our asses are on the line. If this is stupid, then it's stupid. And we tried, but it sucked.
Yeah.
And I was standing in the back in the backstage, and those first jokes started coming off, and people started laughing, and man, I'm getting
just
emotional
a weight off your
right now. Oh, dude, it was huge.
Weight off your shoulders.
Huge, yeah. Done. We did it.
Yeah,
it worked.
I want to go.
People like it.
I want to go into the writing process a little bit. So obviously, I know for Midwest Murder, you do a lot of research, a lot of writing,
tons of writing.
I assume the same is for the game show like you did for the Surs Valley Animal Shelter Gala and the other live event productions. But the writing, as far as that goes, what does that process look like? Like, how do you get into that writing? Where do you even start with that?
It depends on what you're writing for. So working from the front, Midwest Murder, it starts with research. Again, I've come to a point where there's so much research in the things that I do now. But with Midwest Murder, I find a case, identify a case. I do a ton of research through newspapers, requesting documents, and I'll read everything. I'll read so much, and I will take notes, lots of notes, tons of notes. And
that's one thing I noticed when we were
the last
video. You're just typing everything.
Yes, everything.
Fingers are always moving.
I like to have 20-ish pages of notes, and then from the notes with Midwest Murder, from those notes I'll start to form my story. I'll kind of identify how do I want to tell this story. Not every story begins and ends and is delivered in the same way, right? Some stories might begin with a murder, or you might lead with a city. How do you set the stage? How do you create atmosphere within the story that you're going to tell, right? Some people, their true crime podcast, they're reading off Wikipedia what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm taking all of the
formulating your own story.
Factual data and building an atmospheric story around it with key elements that you would want from an interesting story, right? That's Midwest Murder. The creative side with comedy, writing comedy, that was really challenging. That was even intimidating. And I still don't feel as confident in my ability to write, say, a monologue joke, but I know that I can write funny skits and funny dialogue. I feel very confident in my ability to write dialogue and to write a narrative. But a monologue joke's a different beast. We had to learn how to write a monologue joke. And there's some nice little, again, neat little how-tos. And you got to find what are the elements, right? You have a beginning, a transition, and then a punchline at the end. Those are the basic elements of it. But how do you make it familiar and fun for the audience? But that creative process is fun because you're sitting around with maybe 6 to 10 people, and you're throwing ideas around and
just
things
like a brainstorming, like
together.
a round table type.
Right.
Thing.
One of the most fun parts of Goodnight Minot and Goodnight Live were writing the skits, the short cinematic featurettes that we made. And they were, for us, we felt they were very sitcom worthy, and we were writing little mini storylines and things. There were a lot of big payoffs, and that just comes to sitting down. Those felt really flowing, right? We got into a flow for those where that stuff came easier for me in writing. Again, what does comedy look like? And we've had a lot of fun with that.
I want to transition a little bit now into more of the business side of things. See if we can get some advice and some things that people can use tangible today. Obviously, the main goal of the podcast is to help people out that are interested in business. So you work with a lot of clients on a day in, day out basis. What is it like working with clients? How are you helping these clients? Like, what is your pitch to them on why they need to do these things?
I try not to pitch too much. My pitch is confidence in my ability to create and produce and deliver.
Okay.
I've never felt, I'm not a closer. I've never felt comfortable pitching. I think that you can put out there that we have these really professional services. So maybe a pitch for me looks like, what's your idea? What do you want to deliver in it? And then, here's my vision for it, and here's the cost. But
I'm kind of in the same boat because you can't really convince, I do video production specifically, but you can't really convince someone to do video that doesn't want to do video. Right. And you can't convince someone to do a live event production when they don't want to do it.
I'm working on something on the back end right now that we hope to bring to Minot, and I can't say what it is just yet, but it would be a really exciting and engaging opportunity. And I suppose there is a real pitch with that, right? You need to understand what the total package is of what you want and discuss it in a meaningful way. How is it going to have an impact on the people who are interested in this, right? So on what levels? Is it meaningful on a consumer level, a business level, an investor level, on all those levels? And how can you show that there will be forward momentum for this, right? So I think it's important to be able to articulate the vision and really lay out for people how it can work effectively. And so I feel like that in a way is my pitch, but otherwise, if somebody wants something, again, creative, so if somebody wants something creative, we'll walk in with 5 ideas. Okay, you want a commercial or 2 commercials. Here's our 5 ideas for those. Pick 2. Yeah. You don't like any of these? Okay, we'll go back to the drawing board.
And get some more for you.
So it can look, it's on a case-by-case basis. It really is. And I've gotten to a point now where instead of pitching people, it was more about becoming visible and being able to showcase what you are capable of. And then instead of having to pitch and close people, you find people a little bit more organically or through networking and conversations. Yes, absolutely. Because it's hard. Understanding your value and knowing your worth in the beginning when you set out on your own business was really difficult. So I made very little money in the beginning, and I'm still building my way to earning more money through the different things I do. But I got by on little to nothing for several years as I just had to build it and had to grow it and get it moving.
As far as
you pivot to other ideas too, like pivot to other ways to make money.
You mentioned pricing. How do you have any advice or tips for people? Because I know I struggled this in the beginning. I didn't know how to price my services. Is there anything that you have, a tangible piece of advice that you can, for people that are just starting, how do you even go about pricing?
Again, it's the research. Find out what the industry standards are and where are you? If the industry standard, you using just broad numbers right here, right? If the hourly live event production ranges from $100 an hour to $5,000 an hour. That's a broad stroke. Okay, well, what kind of services am I delivering here? What am I bringing, and what is that worth? There are measurables out there. There are things online that can help you gauge that. Or what's an hourly videographer? Is it $50 an hour or $500 an hour? Well, I've been doing this for 1 month, and my camera is average to above average. Okay, $150 an hour seems fair. Whatever it might be. That for me. What's my equipment? What's my experience? What does the industry say?
When did you know that this is, from the outfield here, but when did you know that you wanted to create a business where you could get paid based on value instead of hourly? Did that ever click in your mind?
No, because it was just scratching and clawing to make money and stay afloat and not have to go and sell cars in the beginning. Yeah. And eventually I had to stop.
That's where you mentioned being a yes man.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I said yes to everything. And it was a process of proving your production capabilities. I did tons of projects that were for little to no money, or were just passion projects that I wanted to do because I had the time in the studio and wanted to showcase my things. So I did all that, but knowing that I wanted to work for myself, it happened really quickly. Within the first 6 months of starting my podcast as a hobby, again, as I was transitioning from one job to the next, I knew I wasn't going to move forward in this new business that my old boss was going in, and I had to figure something out.
Were the main benefits of you wanting to work for yourself? Everyone always says, "Oh, I want to be my own boss. I want to do this." What were the main benefits for you? Was it being your own boss? Did you not want to work for anybody? Was it the financial freedom?
Those things were cool. For me, the first thing and foremost, I wanted to be present for everything in my kids' lives. That was really family. My oldest son, he had moved to Colorado at the end of 8th grade. It was really hard. So his high school years were in Colorado. He'd come up here for the summers. And for me, I started seeing what was happening with this job and thinking, well, I could work for myself. So having my own schedule and being able to, if I want to be at my kid's game, or I want to take them to school in the morning or pick them up from school, whatever that might be, I have the absolute freedom to be able to do that for the most part. Now, of course, work still can get in the way of some of those things, but I don't want to miss recitals. I don't want to miss soccer games. I don't want to miss those moments of their life. Yeah. So there's a lot of jobs I could have taken, and a lot of opportunities I could have taken that would have earned me more money and less time. And I guess I chose the latter, and we'll find out in the end if I chose right. So far, I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you made the choice so far, or made the right choice so far.
But then it became the economic freedom of working for myself. Yeah. But that was the cherry on top. That was the genesis, was that freedom of time to be around and with my kids and my family.
Did you ever have? So I had an experience where when I started my video production company, I got a few job offers here and there to come work, full time, and whatever the pay was good and everything. But I turned them down. Did you ever have sometime throughout your process where you got offered something that maybe had a little bit more security, but you still stuck with this route?
Yes.
Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
No, I was offered.
How did you go about the process of deciding what to do?
I was offered a sales position, right? There was a lot of oil companies motivated, and they need people who were good at customer service facilitation and interfacing with potential clients. Okay. And it just good money and solid benefits and everything like that. But I was already sort of committed, and within those first 6-ish months, I really felt something with the Good Talk, and I really wanted that time. And it was going to be more travel and again, more, I wanted the freedom of my time.
And sometimes, I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes making less money to do what you want, be your own boss, is 100% worth it. Cause you can go get a job for $150K a year, but if you make $100K doing something you love, you know what I mean? Or even if it's not on that scale, maybe it's, $75K, and then, or you work for yourself for 40 or 50. And I feel like just the self gratification of doing something on your own makes up for that.
It does. It really does, Easton. And I just had the benefit of not having an abundance of debt. I didn't have like student loans or medical debt or credit card debt or anything crazy. It's just my house payment and just these things. So I had
up so much.
Right. And I had saved money really, really well. And so I was just in a position to allow myself the opportunity to try this out, to make a move. And if that meant I wasn't making much money for a couple of years, and it was just getting by for a few years, but things pick up steam.
I want to pivot a little bit here, just a couple more questions, and then I'm going to kick you out of here. I want to talk about some of your biggest successes. Was there any point, throughout your process where you had a job or you had some type of success where you kind of fist pumped to yourself saying, I think this can work? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like a turning point.
Several. I think several. Each time that in the beginning, when we got our first guest, that was a goal. Something important that I've done along the way was set a lot of small attainable goals. And I think that was important. It's important to have the big dream and where you want to get to ultimately, but it was so many like little small attainable goals. Getting the first guest was a goal, and we got that, and it was this awesome experience, and people responded really well to it. And then we kept being able to get more and more guests, and again talking about more and more meaningful topics. But all these little goals, getting video was a goal. Making a second show was a goal. We started out with just the good talk, but then I added the coffee talk, and people really loved that. And so all these little steps along the way. Very, very important.
Okay, now I want to transition to biggest failures. Is there any big lessons you had to learn that I used to live in Canada, and my billet dad told me when I was deciding whether or not to go to college. He didn't go to college, and he's a realtor. And he said he had one big lesson that cost him like $50,000. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think everyone has, that. He said if he went to school, he would have avoided that mistake, but I don't think everyone has that big of a failure. Some people do. But was there anything that's like, okay, that sucked, but I'm going to learn from it?
Yes, but I want to go back real quick to the fist pump moments, because those small attainable goals, cool, but keystone moments, getting Goodnight Minot going.
Yep.
Meeting people like Josh Walsky, Sean Antangney, she's had played a big part in my life, helped me improve vastly as a writer.
Okay.
That first reception to early Midwest Murder episodes, the fist pump moment, selling out my first show for Midwest Murder,
which is awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. And we continue to do that. And each time we have a slightly bigger audience, every one of those moments is just a pinch me moment. This is wild. This is
doesn't
awesome.
feel real, I assume.
Sometimes it doesn't. It gets more real a little each time. So those, and then I think my favorite fist pump moment that has happened along the way is I met Dr. Emerson Eads, and he teaches the history of rock and roll class at Minot State University. And he's been a guest on my podcast, and we've hung out a few times. And somewhere along the way, he discovered my profound enthusiasm and passion for my favorite rock band, my favorite band, Led Zeppelin.
Yep.
So he invited me to be a guest speaker every semester in his history of rock and roll class to teach the class about Led Zeppelin. So I do one session every semester. It is awesome. And so, if there's anywhere that this journey has brought me, teaching people about my favorite band. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Isn't that crazy? You go from working in retail, and next thing you know, you're teaching kids about Led Zeppelin. That's crazy, the transformation you see there.
Well, hey man, I worked retail. I sold vacuums, Easton. I did insurance. I mean, I did a lot of things. Managerial. I bartended. Right. There's been a lot of things that happened before I started the podcast, and I'm here now. So it was cool to have different experiences throughout my life that got me here. But all those moments, really, really cool. So I got to share the fist pumps, because you got to celebrate the wins. It's really important.
That's the ones we want to hear. But now the ones I want to hear are the failures, the crash and burns. These are the stories that people can take things from.
What?
If there are none, we can skip it.
Well, there are, but I think that some of my crashes and burns are less business, more personal, and those are important, because your personal life can impact your business life. And so I'm not so sure that I have specific failures to share, but more moments of self-actualization and self-realization that you can grow from. And so I think what I would just impart on that failure moment is just know you're going to stumble and you're going to fall, and it's okay to cry. It's okay to grieve, and feel everything, because life is going to throw it all at you. And if you want to be here having a conversation like this, that is your dream, things are going to go wrong along the way, and you're going to get hurt. You're going to get told no. Someone's going to tell you your idea sucks, right? I have to
probably more than one person. A lot of people are there's going to be so many people that are against you.
I have been told that my voice is the worst sound somebody has heard in their entire life, man.
And I've been listening to it for 45 minutes. It's not that bad.
Right. So you're going to get punched, man. And life is going to kick you, and you have to persevere. You have to get through that shit. So there's all kinds of failures, and yeah, that's the best I can give you.
No, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. Honestly, like that's one thing when I started my business, you have the people in your inner circle that are really rooting for you, but there's so many people out there that are not rooting for you just out of whether it's jealousy or spite or whatever. They don't want to see you succeed. I know I started my business in my parents' basement, and it didn't feel real, for a majority of the time, probably. And I heard it from a lot of people. Oh, it's just some home business out of there. And now, now we're here having this podcast. So it's still a home business. It's a home studio now, but
look, that's a validating moment.
Yeah,
it is.
So I got one more question for you. Well, two more questions actually for you. I'll talk about this one, and then we'll go to your North Star, your end goal. Is there any top business people that you look up to or draw inspiration from, or anyone that you'd really like to meet?
Rogan.
Yep.
For sure. On
his podcast.
I know he's all controversial now. It's like, it's become this weird thing, and whatever. It's because he's willing to talk to everybody, whether he agrees with them or not. And so, but before there was any controversy around him, he was a guy who didn't know shit about podcasting. They didn't know what the heck they didn't know what they were doing at all. And
he literally just wanted to talk to people.
Yeah. And it grew and it evolved, and it was very natural and wonderful and organic. And I would not have gotten into podcasting if I had not encountered that. There's just no way. I don't believe I would have found my way here. So that certainly is one of them. I really took to Gary Vee for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. His message, once it's in you, it's kind of in you, and then you can. Because I watched all his stuff when I first started my clothing company, which was in high school, and then after you hear the same message 358 times, and then it's okay, I understand.
I'm in it. But he was, at least for me in the beginning, his message about tripling down on your talents and then partnering with people who have the skill sets that you don't, that allow you to excel. That was a really important and key message, and accepting that you can't learn it all yourself. You're not necessarily going to have time to be the video writer, the video editor, the video social media guy. And sometimes we are all of that.
You have to start with all the hats, but once you get to the point where you can hire out those, it is, or just actually game changing. Work
with people, trade, find out where that mutually beneficial ground is, and stand on it together. So that was what I took away from Gary Vee in the beginning. That I thought was pretty key. I mean, there's a lot of interesting people out there I'd love to meet, but those are a couple that at least jump out.
That would be fun to have a conversation with. Last question I got for you. What's your North Star? I know we've talked about this before. A couple months ago, we went and got a coffee and kind of chatted a little bit, but what is the North Star for Jonah Lantto in your business? You share as much as you need to. If there's things you don't want to share, that's totally fine. If you want to keep it on the down low until they actually happen, that's awesome. But what does the future look like?
The North Star, I think, for me, is ever growing and evolving. I certainly, the North Star when we did that vision boarding meeting was full-time studio producing almost round-the-clock content, not like a 24/7 news channel or anything, but turnkey. There's people making stuff all the time. More time for me to be creator, producer, less time for me to have to do the more technical side and marketing side and things like that.
Okay.
That is a significant North Star. The other one with Midwest Murder, as Midwest Murder grows, I mean, and we're so humbled by the support. It's so cool, and we work really hard to make Midwest Murder what it is, and the response is incredible. And we are performing now for audiences of like 150 to 200 people.
Yep.
And it's really cool. So the North Star for Midwest Murder, I want to be in beautiful venues across the Midwest, like the Fargo Theater that are seating 500 to 1,000 people, stadium, beautiful theater seating, and going on tour. That's the North Star for Midwest Murder. And we're pushing really hard for it.
Which is exciting. I mean, I think you're going to get there. I think it's just a matter of time, but
I mean, we almost broke the charts, man. We almost broke the podcast charts with Midwest Murder.
I remember seeing that.
We're getting there. Like, we're going to hit it. And that would be, I think as a podcaster, as a professional podcaster, that's a made it moment.
Oh yeah.
Getting any of your podcasts, even if it's for a week, just to be charted. Hey, we charted right here. Here it is. That's proof is in the pudding that this podcast is in the top 1% of all podcasts.
Yeah,
which
is sweet.
This means something, and that becomes more and more significant as time goes on, because more people are listening to podcasts, and the skills that are required to create meaningful content in the world of podcasting, those are valuable.
Yeah, and that's awesome. On Midwest Murder, I actually listened to it. Hopefully the people watching this listen to it too. But I think it's just about enjoying the process. Those stepping stones. It's about taking one more step every single day. And eventually after, 2-3 years, maybe even shorter, you're somewhere you never thought you'd be.
Learn from everybody you can. Yeah. And yes, you're very right. I feel that through all the hundreds of guests that I was able to speak to, I learned something. I absorbed, right, some of their energy, some of their intelligence. And it was, to me, it's I can't read every book that gets put in front of me, but if I could hang out with the author for 45 minutes and just meet them, I'm going to learn a lot.
Oh, for sure. So that's all the questions I got for you. Jonah, where can people find you? Where can they find your business if they're looking for you online?
Look, if you're looking for me online, you can certainly just find me, Jonah Lantto. I'm not hard to find on Facebook, and Midwest Murder. We're out there on all the social medias, anywhere podcasts can be found. The Good Talk Network. Yeah, that's me.
Go give Midwest Murder and the Minot Business Podcast 5-star review.
Yeah, check them out. I 5-starred you guys on Spotify.
I appreciate it.
I've got you.
I appreciate it.
I'll be coming for you on iTunes now. Now that I know what the real deal is.
I'm a Spotify guy myself, so I kind of slander Apple Podcasts, or not Apple Podcasts, but like the Apple Music a little bit. But it's all fun and games. Jonah, thank you very much for coming on the show. It was a very good talk. Hopefully we can have you on again someday.
Easton, Bennett, good talk, man. We'll see you out there.
Awesome. Thank you guys for watching. That is episode 4 of the Minot Business Podcast. We will see you guys next week for episode 5.
Rock and roll.